Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer, number LB4311-350-646. This is a single acting spring hinge by Bommer, and it is a very common one as well. Here's what I mean. Let's dissect the part number. LB stands for lube bearing. It's a maintenance-free concealed sort of bearing construction from Bommer. The 4311 is a reference to the fact that it is a full mortise residential weight, quarter-inch radius with standard template pattern screw holes, which we'll talk more about in a minute. The 350 means that the hinge is 3.5 by 3.5. The height is first when you say those dimensions, so it's 3.5 high by 3.5 wide. The 646 is satin nickel. It means two things actually. It means it's a satin nickel finish, but on a steel base. Okay. 619 would refer to it being a brass base with a satin nickel finish, but 646 tells us the base material is steel, which is very common. Now, referring to those 4311 references earlier, there's a link below this video to the template that shows you everything important dimensionally about the hinge, notably that template pattern on the screw holes. So you can review those physical dimensions of where these holes are located to compare that against your existing installation. Don't assume this is the right hinge because there's lots of different ones, but refer to the template and that will get you to be confident that you've got the right hinge. The 4311 also means that it's a quarter-inch radius, very common for use in residential doors, and that's a result of how the door manufacturer makes their doors. When they come through with the router and cut for the hinges on the door and frame, they use a 1/2-inch diameter bit, and they don't go back and square the corners. It's a faster sort of time-saving step when you're not going back to square the corners out. So that's why you've got a quarter-inch radius. It's a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaf that, and it's also referred to in the template, that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. This hinge is specifically 96 thousandths thick, which is typical for residential applications and is known as a residential hinge as a result. Moving forward, there is a link below this video to the installation instructions, and if your hinge came in a box, it's printed on the back of it as well. If it didn't, the link is there. Guidelines for how many hinges to use. Dealing with doors that are up to 3 foot by 7 foot. If you've got a 70-pound door, they're looking for 2 hinges. And if you've got a 90-pound door, then all 3 hinges. Now, I'm a fan of all spring hinges, and it's not for the obvious reason. It's for the reason that I've installed them, and I've set them over different periods of time throughout the year where the seasons change. And my experience has taught me having greater quantities of spring hinges on a door, therefore having more spring power, residual stored energy in the springs on reserve, is beneficial to getting the door to reliably close, but more importantly, to latch. The point of this is to close the door, spring hinge. And if it's not latching the door because you're underpowered in terms of the quantity of spring hinges, then it's ineffective. The analogy I use is like a tugboat. Tugboat doesn't go very fast, but it can pull a lot of weight. And when you've got spring power on reserve, that crucial last 5 to 10 degrees of the door actually latching is where that will come into play, because you've got extra torque, so to speak, happening at the end. When you're underpowered in the spring hinge department, you have to set the tension so high just to get the door moving through the closing cycle. Keeping in mind it has to overcome air pressure, it has to overcome the friction of the latch bolt hitting the frame, okay? And you'll find greater success is the bottom line. At least I always have. Setting the spring hinge tension is simple. You'll get a package with a tension rod and then a tension pin that is in the same package as well. A little silver pin that's there. Okay? I'm going to poke the tension rod out of the packaging a little bit. When you install these, you'll install it with the tension collar pointed towards the top of the door. And it can work for a left-hand door or a right-hand door. insert the tension rod, and then turn it clockwise. That's the key. Turn it clockwise. And as you do so, you reveal new additional holes. And it's into one of those new additional holes that you insert a tension pin. 3 additional holes is all that Bommer recommends that you reveal when setting the tension. If you set the tension too high, you can break the spring, and it's irreparable at that point. And which doesn't happen often, but it can and has. Now, you set the tension, get your door working correctly, and then you'll be able to determine how to set all of the spring hinges, 1, 2, or 3, whatever is on the door. Now, you can certainly mix and match this with a standard 3.5-inch hinge because the axis of pivoting is compatible with standard hinges, so that won't be a problem. You might have a 20-pound door, hollow core, and the fact that this hinge is 3.5 tells me that it's an 1 3/8 door. A 25-pound hollow core door, it's hard to make an argument for getting, 3 spring hinges on that door. So you can certainly mix and match. Put these up at the top is where you want the spring hinge to be located. Very nice quality item by Bommer. The last thing I'd like to point out to you is the Bommer logo. Right above it, it says Made in USA, a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. Screws are included in a complimentary finish. You'll get all wood screws and all metal screws, so that's no problem. And Bommer makes this hinge available in several architectural finishes: your brasses, your bronzes, your nickels, prime coat, black, etc., zinc. If you have any questions on the Bommer LB4311-350-646 single acting spring hinge and satin nickel finish, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.